Today I'm going to show you how I blend with watercolor brush markers. So first off, being a lefty is a little trickier because we smear our marker or ink, whatever we're writing with. So right here you'll see I put a piece of paper down, and then that way I don't smear. The thing is, since the ink is still wet, the ink will bleed onto the paper, so you have to be really careful not to like move the paper so it doesn't smudge. But it's way less chance of smearing this way than if you didn't have a piece of paper, because your hand will just go right into the ink. For righties, this may come in handy as well for different areas. But you'll see here, I am kind of ghosting over like what I'm going to do for the flourish. That just helps me kind of visualize it in my mind and kind of know what I'm going to do and almost practice it before I do it. This design of how I did the word January, I actually sketched this beforehand so that I knew what I wanted to do, and I was kind of using that sketch as reference as I was doing it. So here I actually took a marker that is a little bit darker of a blue, and I believe this one is a lighter color blue. It's kind of like more of a teal. And then I'm going back over top of the letters and just blending in that color. You'll see it was more of like a teal color there. And then I just blend the rest of the marker in from the previous color. And this is real time, so I wanted to mention that as well. You'll see how slow I actually wrote the word or lettered the word, and how slow I'm doing this blending of the markers. It's very important to go slow. It's very misleading when you see a lot of these videos online. They're almost always sped up to be shorter and more interesting, but this I kept real time. Just this part at least is real time. So you'll see I'm just going to take you through how I blended the marker colors. I'm also making the strokes thicker as I'm doing this, so I'm kind of like adding some thickness. Just something that you can do as well if you'd like to. Something else to mention is just the type of paper that I'm using right now. So I am using a Canson watercolor paper. Usually I suggest people not use watercolor paper when they're using brush markers like this, just because the watercolor paper can be kind of rough on your brush tips and it will fray the tips. But the thing is with these, the blending really works best on watercolor paper. And I also find that these markers, which are the Karin Brush Marker Pro, the tips are pretty hardy and they don't really fray easily, which is awesome. And that's why I like to use them on the watercolor paper. Next, we're going to do a drop shadow on the word, and I just got a lighter gray color, still the same marker type, the Karin Brush Marker Pro. And now what I'm doing is I'm just drawing an extra stroke on the right side of every stroke, the right, and then also like on the bottom. So the right and to the bottom is what you want to kind of keep in mind. You can put this drop shadow on either side, but I always tend to kind of go on this side. It's just what I do for my drop shadows. So sometimes it gets tricky to know where to put the drop shadow, but if you always think to the bottom right of each stroke, you'll kind of know what you're supposed to be doing there. Another thing that's really nice about these markers and how well they blend is that I can just draw right over top of the blue stroke with the gray and not worry about anything. It's actually just kind of blending it nicely, and that helps to kind of keep our drop shadow nice and clean and kind of connected to the letter. So the next thing here, what I'm doing is I'm adding some detail to the letters by drawing little snowflakes and dots. This pen was kind of giving me trouble when I did this. You'll see it's kind of skipping, and this is actually a little bit sped up even. I was going slower when I was doing this in real time, but this pen was kind of skipping for me. And usually this is the best performing gel pen that I've found for white. And this is the Uni-ball Signo white gel pen. And again, I'll link all of the supplies down below in the description. But for the most part, I think this one is great, even though this pen's been sitting around for a while. So I don't know if that was why it was being that way. But this is the one that I found that gives you the most opaque white. A lot of them that I've used in the past, other types that I've tried, you'll draw with it, but it's like more transparent, and then whatever color is underneath starts to show through, and it's not as opaque as you'd want it to be. So again, you'll see I sped this up so that we can kind of get through it, but I just went through each thick part of the letter, and I added a snowflake and some dots. And I tried to mix up the style of snowflakes so that they're not all the same. That just gives it some nice balance and contrast. The other thing to try not to do is make the snowflake kind of sit on the same part of each letter, because you don't want those to like kind of go across in a line when you're done and looking at it. You want them to kind of be, scattered about the letters so that they're in different areas. So while we're watching me kind of go through and add all of these details, I figured it was a good time to just chat about just learning brush lettering in general. So I remember before I started, I would see these type of videos and just be kind of drooling, wishing I can kind of do this myself. But the thing is, it's really important to start from the beginning if you want to learn brush lettering. And, that means starting with a small tipped brush pen and learning the basic strokes on how to create all of the letters. There is a rhyme or reason to it. It's not just kind of however you draw your letters normally. So, each of your lowercase letters are built up from individual strokes. So if you're wanting to learn brush lettering and you're new to this, check out the description. I have a link to my free brush lettering intro course where it'll take you through all of the basic brush strokes, and then I have next steps from there. So that's about it. I hope that you enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. See you next time.